Welcome to With You Podcast,
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
And today's episode is going to be about etiquette.
Mind your manners.
I'm a little uncomfortable about this, but I think it'll be fun. And we have a story about that. But I wanted to hear, what have you been doing today? This is the end of the day, and it's nice to check in.
Yeah, I know. We were in separate places. I got to lead a bunch of students on a career observation day.
Oh, well,
which is kind of hard for a doula. It's college students who are exploring their options, and they're all in the health sciences field. And so these are people who are interested in something to do with birth, usually nursing or obstetrician work or midwifery.
Yeah.
So I got to take them on a tour of a birth center locally, meet some midwives, some nurses, ultrasound tech, some really cool people.
Nice.
So it was fun.
Yeah. Well, and I know why you had access to the students, because we were on faculty development day today. So all the faculty at the college were together learning.
Oh, you're saying because the students didn't have class.
The students did not have class. So
instead of class, they got to go.
They got to go on a field trip.
Exactly. Field trip day.
I got to sit in class for hours, and we were learning about AI, and it was overwhelming.
It was a timely topic.
It was a timely topic, and maybe we'll share more of what learned in that, but it's just humbling. I think education is changing, and we have to figure that out. And I'm an old dog. I'm used to kind of my patterns.
Yeah.
Which I think is great for us to think about, because we're going to talk about family patterns and etiquette. And
well, why are we talking about etiquette?
Well, it started with a gift from our daughter-in-law. So we are known for our table time. I mean, in our family, we tried to have at least a couple of times a week a family meal.
We sat around the table for a meal every night of the week, unless it was absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
Which sometimes with their sports practice schedules, it was impossible to have a really sit-down meal. But we would, on those days, we'd have kind of a double meal. I'd feed them something before practices. We'd come back later and have kind of a second meal. But we really did make a big effort to have time around the table for every dinner.
And we would have their friends come over. It was dinner and a show most of the time.
Mostly because we talk about things that not everybody talks about around the dinner table.
Which I think is where it goes that we got an etiquette book from our daughter-in-law.
Because let's say it's not always what people would consider polite conversation.
No, I remember a couple. We have two daughter-in-laws, and both of them were a little bit wide-eyed, some of the meals.
Both of them come from quieter families. One is an only child. Yes, yeah. Lovely families, but probably not probably a lot more polite.
Yep,
so it did start with our daughter-in-law giving our daughter a manners book, which was not, I do not believe it was meant as a message or something that she felt. We joked about it. When she gave it to her for her birthday, we sat around and read some things out of it, because this book is called A Lady at the Table. And it originated, I think originally was published in, what was it, 1950?
Yeah,
or was it earlier?
1950s, I think. And
but has been updated. But still, some of the wording and some of the rules made us laugh, mostly because we don't always follow these rules.
And as we were reading that book, then my son decided, we probably need a gentleman's guide. And so while we were talking, he ordered it, and it showed up the next day. So we have both a lady's guide, or not, it's not guide.
A lady at the table.
A lady at the table and a gentleman at the table.
Yeah. And we thought it would be fun to see if those rules are different.
Yeah, and it was a little humbling how many I violate.
Well, and I think it all goes back to how important we believe, having a meal together with people is for relationships. A lot of great things happen having a meal together. And the rules of etiquette used to be really a lot more of a priority, I think, for people to learn. Even in business, like if you joined a company, they would teach you table manners because you're having business lunches and you need to know sort of more formal manners or ways to behave at the table, things to not bring up, the way to use your cutlery.
I forget where it was, but I don't know if it was when I was younger. I lose track of time, but sitting at a table where there was like 4 forks and 4 spoons, and I was just like, I only need one set of each and I'm good. And I would try to hold on to it, and the waiter would be like, sir, can I have that fork? And I'm like, I need it. But you're supposed to work from the outside in. Did you have that kind of formal
Not
dining?
formal training, but my mom and my dad both taught us that. We had family meals, and just in the course of life, my mom taught me to lay a table correctly. I still am very particular.
It drives me crazy.
I think I believe presentation is nice. So if we ask one of the kids to set the table and the silverware is all haphazard, I like to go. I mean, maybe I haven't done as good of a job as passing along that information, but the sharp side of the knife should face the plate. The knife and the spoon are on the right. The fork is on the left. You were taught that basic stuff.
Yeah,
the cup is.
You know how I was taught it? The number of letters in the utensil is the number of letters in left or right. So fork, 4 letters. Left, 4 letters. Spoon, knife, glass, all 5, all on the right.
It just doesn't work if it's another language or if they call it something different.
Well, yeah, if you call it a cup, then it goes right in the center of your plate.
Yeah.
I think that's how it
so
goes.
Things like that. And some things that I will throw in there as we talk about these, because my dad was taught those. I don't know if he was taught them in boarding school, but he took some of those seriously, not sitting with your elbows on the table. He really would laugh at, certain rules, like not eating like a barbarian with your hands, certain things. And
yeah, I know you've reminded me of a couple of those as we go. And it wasn't that. I just don't think I learned very well, because I think my mom, we had like linen tablecloths occasionally and like fancy napkins, and I think she tried, but my brother and I were not compliant. We were not gentlemen.
Well, we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll read these rules and find out.
Well, where should we start?
So there's a lot of funny things in the lady and gentleman at the table, but we kind of pulled up a list of, like, an old-fashioned list of what used to be the well-known etiquette rules separately for ladies and gentlemen, right?
Yeah. So why don't we start? Where do you want to start? I'm uncomfortable. I'm starting to stress sweat
I know.
already.
Should I read what the ones are for women?
Well, maybe we just go one at a time and we talk a little bit about, you'll do one and then I'll do one. Maybe we do it that way.
Okay.
All right. So,
so for women, number 1, never correct a man in public.
Oh, this isn't that bad at all.
Where did you get these from?
Off the interweb. Yeah. So, like, why?
It says, well, we're not going to discuss these in detail, but it says that women were expected to avoid disagreeing with or correcting a man, no matter how incorrect he might be.
Wow, that just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, but I mean that
was a gender role.
It's not like that's that old.
No, and I can understand the fragile male ego.
I think we'll just go through these pretty quick, because then we'll read the sort of the modern ones, because it is pretty funny to see the difference. I like
this one for a gentleman. And because I was actually taught this.
You still do this.
I still do this. Always walk on the street side of the sidewalk. And this is what my grandfather told me. So he said it keeps things from splashing up on a lady's dress or just on their shoes.
Yeah, so it's a protective thing.
Yeah.
To walk between the lady and the street.
And I would always joke with him about, so we get hit by the horse carriage first. And he didn't find that funny. He's like, yes,
yeah, that's the point.
And he's like, chivalry. And I'm like, we're not in the Middle Ages, but he was just kind of like, yeah, that's what you do to be polite, because it's easier to get your clothes clean. So and you find that you're like, what? I remember earlier on, you're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to get on street side. And you're like, why?
Yeah.
And it was just,
I never heard of that
habit. And I just wanted you to stay clean, honey.
From all those horse carriages and their splashings.
And the splashes. So,
okay. For women, number 2, always let a man order for you.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Do we ever do? Well,
I think I try a couple of times, but it's usually after we've discussed what. It's not like me trying to read your mind, because that's
the lady will have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do that because we've talked, and it's just like they looked at me and I'm
I
like,
think
okay.
most ladies know what they want to eat.
Yeah. Well, and then the waiter or waitress looks at me like, "Ooh, you're gonna get killed."
Yeah,
But
well, maybe it was that the lady would say what she wanted, but the man does the ordering.
yeah,
Maybe.
I don't know. I think, and this is where it's just changed. I think in terms of relationships of like equality.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't
Yeah.
think,
And not so clearly defined
and I don't think you
roles.
could order for me because even when it's coming out of my mouth, I'm not always sure what's going to be ordered.
No,
It's
no. I would never presume to know what you're going to do at any moment.
which is fair, but I don't think that's a gender thing.
No.
I think that's an executive functioning thing. All right, so the next one for a gentleman is never let a woman carry anything heavier than her purse.
Never
Um,
let. Let's just start with that.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I
Never
mean,
let a woman carry anything heavier than a purse.
there
What
is
purse?
there is a lot of enforced things, but I mean this happens too. I see this with some of our friends, and like the guy's supposed to carry the suitcase, or I thought about like when we had kids, I felt I was a pack mule, would just carry things a lot,
Mm.
not the diaper bag, but I'd have a kid in the backpack.
Oh, I know. When you have that many small kids, everybody's lugging a lot of things.
But I think again, this is a implicit message of frailty, which isn't true.
Yeah, but also just taking care of in some ways. I think that's where people get confused between where's the line between I'm taking care of you and I want to allow you to be free from this burden versus you're not capable.
Yeah, and I for me, I think it's behaviors are neutral in and of themselves. It's kind of why are we doing it, and am I
Yeah.
showing care, respect, or is it a power thing?
Right.
Right. The why in these
Yeah.
cases matter.
Well, the let might make it seem like a power thing.
Well, it does. Well,
Okay.
that's why it's always I mean, it seems like it's always the women letting something happen.
Okay, so the next one for the woman is don't initiate conversation with a man. A lady was to wait for a gentleman to speak first, lest she seem too forward.
Oh,
So you didn't want to seem too,
mhm.
into it, I guess.
That message I got as a child, though, speak when spoken to.
Yeah. Well, that's more, authority.
Well, yeah, so that's why it's uncomfortable to me.
I see.
I think it was like, don't talk at the table, because but it is a power thing that I think has kind of shifted, because you talk to me at the table.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I like a lot. The third one for men, a gentleman always stands when a lady enters the room. Now,
Yeah. There's no way we could keep that up.
no,
Every
and
time people coming in and out of the room.
I think you would come in and out of the room on purpose, so I would get all my
just get you
squats
doing your
in.
exercises.
I would just have mammoth thighs. But it is interesting because this also, like at a dinner table, though, this is what I was taught. You stand for people coming to the dinner table, and you stand until everybody sits down if you're the host, to kind of just show deference and respect. And so recently, this Christmas, we have a Christmas dinner at the college where all faculty and staff come together. So all the psychology folks, we sit together, and I decided to show some manners because it was kind of fancy. And so everybody came to the table, and I would stand up for people that would come to the table and sit down. Now it was a buffet. So it got a little bit, I did get some squats in, and
So you were doing that every time people came to the table?
yeah, and we had a table of 10. And so it was a lot. And I think I was annoying, because I went to the dessert table to get a dessert, and I came back and all 9 people stood up, and I didn't really recognize. I was kind of looking around like, what's happening? And then I got it, and it was really funny. But I think context matters. Like I knew that was polite, but it didn't work in the context
No.
that I tried. So,
No.
I don't think a gentleman has to stand up all the time.
No, I don't think that's really a thing that happens unless it's a really formal setting anymore.
I know most of these things I picture like people in tuxes and ball gowns, and not just at your dining room table.
Yeah, well, it probably was still more in a formal dining setting than, just at the family dinner table.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's true. All right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. These women, these are wearing me out. Okay. So for women, the next one is walk behind a man, not beside him.
Oh,
And I don't think that's gone in some cultural settings. Women expected to follow men rather than walk alongside them, which is also a statement of, you know, yeah,
yeah. Well,
authority.
when we walk, I can't keep up with you. It's remarkable how much you can turn
When you have
those
short legs,
over.
you have to have a fast pace to keep up with everybody else.
So I
Yeah.
wander behind. But yeah. Okay. Well,
Okay.
that's one's different.
Yep.
The next one is, oh, I don't like this one at all. The fourth one, a gentleman pays for everything, no exceptions.
No exceptions.
And men were expected to cover the meal,
I
the
think
tickets, expenses, everything.
That's one that's confusing now for people because that always has been kind of the traditional thing that men pay, on a date or, for dinner or whatever. And I saw it as our kids were kind of coming up through prom and stuff like that. And there would be discussions among the moms of like, okay, my son asked this girl to prom. Is he supposed to buy the, $100 ticket and also pay for dinner? And he's 16. He doesn't have, doesn't have that kind of money. Or she asked him, should he pay? And it was really divided. Some people said, yeah, he's the man. If he wants to go on a date, he pays for everything. And some people said, I feel like it should be, she asked him, they should split it. It seems like there's not a clear cut, rule.
Yeah.
Now
Although I
that.
think there is a cultural rule because, I mean, we were just out for lunch doing a podcast lunch meeting and we got done with lunch and the wait staff came and put the check and they moved both of our glasses of water to put it right between us.
Yeah. Well, we've noticed that now we've kept our eye out for that because it's happened multiple times that we notice people used to make an assumption about who was the most powerful person at the table. I think who was the one who was probably going to pick up the bill. And that was a big assumption to make. But traditionally, the bill would always go to the oldest gentleman at the table. And we've noticed now that it always gets placed directly between us. Like they try to measure the distance between us and not make an assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then there's I don't know what the etiquette is for fighting with your friends of splitting a tab or who's going to pick it up, right? There's that. Like when we were living overseas, we had people tell us whoever invites, the cultural expectation is if they invite you out, you should not make a fuss.
And I feel like that is different in different cultures, which is something you really have to figure out because you think you're doing the right thing to pay, and that can be insulting sometimes. And so you've got to figure out your context.
I'm realizing a lot of people are listening to this. So should I tell my tricks, my conflict avoidant trick? Do you know what it is?
Oh, yeah. How you sneakily pay for the bill.
So I just get up to go to the bathroom and then you pay for the bill.
Then you go find the waiter and you pay for it and you sit back down and everybody's wondering, when are they going to bring the check?
And then we're like, let's go. And everybody stands up and the people are like, we need to pay. We can't just eat and dine and dash. And I'm like, don't worry.
Well, there's probably a lot of our friends going, wait, you never did that for me. They'll be like, David, don't you need to go to the bathroom now?
Yeah, that's right. So next time we go out to dinner, someone's like, you look like you need to go to the restroom.
Yeah.
All right. So,
okay. Is it my turn?
Yeah. And so far I like kind of culturally where we've gotten to that we're not necessarily bound by these, although these were our growing up. I mean,
these,
it's not that far off.
No, it's not that far off. It's kind of the stuff we learned. I mean, except for walking behind a man. And the next one.
Okay.
I take exception with this.
Come on.
Laugh at his jokes, even if they aren't funny. A woman, okay, this is funny though, the reason for it. A woman was advised to boost a man's ego by chuckling at his attempts at humor.
Oh man.
It's funny that they don't advise anything vice versa.
No. Well, that's because women are funny and and have a strong sense of ego.
I think I do laugh at your jokes and usually I do find them funny. So that's why we're happily married.
Well, and I'll say just about anything or do anything to get your giggle. So I don't think it's about my male ego. I think it's you're afraid of where the line is.
Right.
And
If I don't give him a laugh at this one, it's going to get worse.
so just laugh, humor them, get it over with. So yeah, but that's really not.
But it's funny that it's about stroking the man's ego, you know, and giving him authority. A lot of these for the woman.
All of these are kind of really not thinking about who we are as people. It's more roles than the actual people and seeing each other as
well. There were a lot of
people.
External rules like that kind of set these gender expectations apart.
Yeah. And
so what's the next one for?
Well, I think about this though, because these were just common and people didn't think about them. I wonder 50 years from now, what people are going to look back of what we're thinking. Oh, isn't it great? It's just normal. And they'll be horrified.
Oh, there'll be I can imagine.
Yeah. All right. So, I don't want to play this game anymore. A gentleman never discusses business with a woman.
Yeah, that's changed.
Women were traditionally thought to be uninterested or incapable of understanding business matters.
I can't hear you when you look down at your paper.
Oh, that's probably good after I read that piece. So that one is just.
I know. I think you're nervous about this one.
Yeah.
We're just reading. We're not saying we discuss business a lot.
I don't believe it at all, but I do think there's still some of those patterns. I know.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that was just supposed to be kept in secret. A lot of, like in the 50s particularly, I don't know what the statistics are, but I think traditionally men took care of the finances and the business world. But a lot of women were at home and wearing their pearls and cooking dinner, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the picture of domestic life.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't have to worry her little head about it. And so that left them really vulnerable.
Well, even that, the TV show, Father Knows Best, was the name of the TV show. And it's just emphasizing the hierarchy. I do think open communication, I know for us, but I think we don't even do this well in terms of talking about finance with the kids, like thinking about openness of money, conversation about that. I think we slide into that. Well, that's just between us and don't involve the kids. And then how do children learn money management? How do they understand? They don't need to know everything, but I think I just feel like this leads to problems.
Yeah.
And still does in terms of how people talk about money. I mean, as a therapist, people fight over sex, parenting, and money. And those are the high conflict areas. And I think it's partly some of the societal rules and patterns that we've gotten into. Rather than transparency. Money makes people nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a personal thing.
Yeah.
Okay. For women, the last one on this list is only wear white gloves when outdoors. So this shows how dated this was when women wore gloves to be out socially. So the white gloves, not outdoors, because I imagine because they'd get dirty.
Yeah.
So white gloves were for inside.
Okay.
And no. This says, but never indoors.
No,
only wear white gloves when out. Okay, I mistook that.
So why
only
is that?
wear white gloves outdoors.
Well, you weren't touching door handles, or
I don't know. I don't know the rules around gloves.
Other than because it's cold, when do you wear gloves?
Only for walks in the cold.
I mean, we did watch some of the Emmys, which was startling. But
the Grammys,
the music folks.
Yeah.
But I think there's gloves coming back. People were wearing like bicep.
Yeah, I think with formal
gloves.
Gowns, people sometimes wear gloves.
Yeah, I don't understand it. A glove is for baseball. And then other than that, I don't know why you would have one.
We don't really anymore.
That's the only gloves I bought for my daughter were baseball batting gloves.
That's right. Made sure she had her lefty softball glove.
That's right. And she wore them outdoors. So proud of that girl. All right. Number 6. Don't allow a woman to light her own cigarette. Honey, I've been doing that wrong all these years. I'm sorry. I
think that's a lot of scenes in, movies from the 50s era of the man lighting the woman's cigarette.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, smoking was still pretty common in public places when we were young, but it's really not in vogue anymore.
No,
So,
and not many people have a lighter on them. I
yeah.
mean, it's interesting, those cultural pieces, because growing up, I was encouraged always to have like a pocket knife by my grandfathers, but with all the flying and everything, all of them have been confiscated. And I think the same thing, lighters, those type of things are just not in vogue.
No,
But
no.
if you take up smoking, honey, you're gonna have to light your own
Oh
cigarettes.
man.
All right. Well, that's some of the history of interesting things. And if you read 1950s like marriage books and relationship books, it's just quite something.
Yeah, to see how far we've come from
Yeah.
some of those rules and expectations.
And the idea of personhood, kind of equal personhood, equal children of God, and the capacity of that, and yet accounting for culture. I mean, how do you navigate those two things? And that's something that's been fun for us living cross culturally, of trying to figure that out and making lots of mistakes.
Yeah.
Lots of mistakes. So we're thankful for our daughter-in-law for helping us look at our own etiquette. And now we did something. You did something.
Well, I just pulled up a quick list of the more modern table manners because I was wondering what are people being taught now. I know what we were taught was kind of more in line with the 50s stuff,
Yeah.
you know. And I don't know if it is being taught, if it is where, because
Yeah.
I think, in some home ec classes and things like that in school, that was where some of that was taught. And I was taught by my parents. I don't think that's so typical anymore because
No.
meals are a much more casual affair now. I think it's more typical that people don't eat together, or even if they do, they're, in the living room watching the TV. And we do that more now
Yeah.
we don't have young kids at home. But
That
I
was
don't know.
that was one of them, of like, turn off the TV, don't have loud music on in the background. But I also think there's strange things like about cell phone kind of usage at the
Yeah, well, there
table.
should
And
be. Well, I just wondered what were some of the sort of abiding rules that have lasted through these different
yeah.
generations. I think so. This list that I got is from, if you think about the top name in etiquette, it's Emily Post.
Okay.
So I know you don't get taught that stuff,
No,
right?
no,
Yeah,
no.
most girls probably know that. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what
You
people know
knew. You
anymore. I
knew
knew
it.
of Emily Post.
Okay.
She writes about etiquette and kind of sets the standard, I guess. So she's still got stuff out there. So the number one, and you'll find this all through the lady at the table and the gentleman at the table, is always in any era, I think, an important rule. Number one, chew with your mouth closed.
Now, Your Honor, I would like to make a argument here.
What's that?
I think that's cultural. I think there's cultures where
Yes,
that,
I think we need to make an assumption that we're talking from basically a United States perspective here.
okay, fair.
And then, maybe the UK and some of the colonies,
Yeah.
basically, because there are, for sure,
Kind of
there's
British influence.
very different
wherever.
ways of eating. When I lived in Japan, the louder you slurp your noodles, the better
Yeah. And
in the udon houses. And
that's not okay in the etiquette books, I've noticed.
no, that's a big no-no
It's
in the
basically any sound from any orifice, not okay.
Yes. So no slurping, no burping, like all those things
Yeah.
are absolutely no.
No sneezing.
That's not true everywhere.
No.
So, we're,
Nathan and I would always claim that a good belch after the meal was German and Dutch background. I don't even know if that's true, but we would.
you just insulted all the.
I know all my German and Dutch friends. So sorry, but that was Nathan. The way Nathan and I tried to get out of being uncouth was using cultural arguments.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
you were so advanced for your
Well,
age.
we didn't want to modify our behavior, so you looked for some way to justify it.
I get it. Okay. Yes, I think people can agree on that one. I think we can argue that manners are just sort of formal ways of eating, and that maybe they're not always culturally the same. And yet, some things I think can harm your relationships. Like I still remember a boy who chewed with his mouth very open and very loudly at the boarding school where I went, the cafeteria, nobody would sit by him. It was that bad.
Yeah.
And I still remember him because of his bad habit at the table, because it was off-putting. Nobody wanted to be around it. He was isolated.
Oh.
So some of these things, some of these are just sort of funny and optional. Some I think are, really helpful to follow for being a good companion at the table.
That's good. I have another story about eating at the table cross-culturally.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I came back from a trip and I enjoyed the country I was in. They showed lots of deference to old people. And so I was basically fed by both sides and of people.
When you say fed, what do you mean? They're putting food in your mouth?
It was like a hot pot, and it would be just like putting food on my plate all the time. And I would turn to talk, and then
so they're serving things onto your plate. They're not feeding you to your mouth.
Not that I remember. No.
Okay. That I remember.
But I was like, well, can we do that? And you're just like, no, you can serve yourself.
Okay.
But it's again, I think I just want to lean into the cultural piece that I don't like being constrained by rules, and that there can be lots of different ways. But the noise one,
don't think of these as rules or as,
okay.
Think of them as more of helpful suggestions for how to have good friends.
Okay. So it's relational building.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay. I should listen.
And the second one, similarly, keep your smartphone off the table. Okay. That's funny because it just made me think of a rhyme my dad would say. I think I told the kids this recently because, sometimes if you recline with your elbows on the table and eat with your hands at the same time, it looks very rude. And my dad, as a little rhyme to remind us, sometimes would say, Tara, Tara, strong and able, get your elbows off the table. I think we could change that to David, smart and able, get your cell phone off the table.
Yeah, that works. Well, and you do see that everybody kind of sits down and they're either putting the face down or face up. But there's most places you see people are having their cell phones on the table, and so
this rule says it, off the table and set to silent. Of course, we always hear the people who embarrassingly their phone rings in church or at the table. Wait to check calls and texts until you're finished with the meal and away from the table, if that's possible. I struggle with this because as a doula, I'm on call and I sometimes have emergencies that come at any time. So I feel a little bit tied to that in a way that sometimes feels rude, and I have to excuse myself. Like even now, I've got somebody due any moment, and I just have to check was that little chime something I need to look at or not.
Yeah.
So I struggle with that a bit, but there have been studies that show even if your phone is on the table face down, it still changes the attention in the conversation.
It's a distraction. It pulls, it's an escape from intimacy.
Right. Well, there's a part of your brain that's attending to that, even if you look like you're engaging in conversation.
Yeah. So that would be a relational choice of like, can I really be present with you and not escape or part of my brain not being there? We're doing that more at the university too, of having cell phones. Some of our professors have a basket and you walk in and you put your cell phone because most of our students are
not on call.
Well, some of them are, but they can hear it buzz and go get it if they need to. But it's shifted though, because I had someone put a phone in the basket, but they had a Apple Watch, and so they could still check.
You can still see it.
And so I wonder about that too. So the cell phone might not be there, but you still have that distraction because you feel it on your body. You can tell, and it's a little bit less intrusive looking at an Apple Watch, but it doesn't mitigate the part of your brain's not present.
Right.
It's
because if you're getting notifications, you're feeling them literally on your body and
taking you out of the moment. I mean, that's what I love about our travels too, because when we have long meals overseas, we don't have to do that and we're completely there.
It's one of the lovely things because we're completely in a different time zone than our friends. So even if they were texting us, they're in bed when we're out to dinner. So we're not feeling like we need to check our phones. There's nothing that we're connected to
And we can easily have 4-hour meals where we're just present with each other.
Just talking. Yeah.
It's really powerful. All right. So cell phones,
Okay.
everybody should try to keep them off the table, if not off your person. I wonder how addicted we are, how well our cell phones have trained us. So it's going to be hard to do that.
Yep. So no cell phone on the table. Number 3, hold utensils correctly. I know you don't think this is a thing. I do, because it says don't use your fork or spoon like a shovel or stab your food. If you've seen somebody do this in a like sort of uncouth way, you notice it. Like,
well, if you grab it with a fist and stab.
Yeah. Well,
that's
one thing my
different.
dad said is your knuckles should never be. Wait, how is it? Your knuckles should never be facing the other person. So you're not holding it like this. Well, we should have utensils to demonstrate. We're trying to.
Hands.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a correct way, a polite way to hold utensils that doesn't look barbaric.
So do you I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask like I don't. Do you hold your fork in your right hand or your left hand?
I hold it in my left hand, but that's also cultural because my mother grew up, in Australian etiquette or whatever, the way they learn to use their utensils. Let's see. How is it different? She cuts food and pushes it onto the fork and then switch it. No, we switch. We switch. No, they don't switch.
The Americans switch.
Yeah. So there's different ways to do it, but there's definitely ways that look ruder than others.
Yeah.
Don't stab pieces of meat and hold it up to your mouth and eat it off the fork in multiple bites, like things that take small bites.
Yeah. And that goes to another challenge. I don't know if it's on there, but it was in the book of don't wolf down your food.
Yeah.
And we have that problem.
That's a habit that we have on both sides of the family of eating fast, which sometimes when we have people at the table, they start to look around and realize they're the last one eating because all the Van Dykes have finished everything on their plate.
And their plate is full.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
I think our family's competitive eaters.
Maybe it's the competition.
Yeah.
I always say growing up as one of 5 kids, just if you didn't eat fast, you never got seconds. So we just kind of,
well, and we had
it.
that in our family too.
Yeah.
There were sometimes they were eating lots of calories.
Yeah.
But it is a problem. It's not good for digestion. But I think holding, like, maybe the proper way of holding the utensils helps slow down the eating.
Yeah. Or eating with chopsticks. That helps me slow down.
Love eating with chopsticks.
Our kids eat with chopsticks a lot.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. I didn't use chopsticks until I lived for a summer in Japan when I was in college. But our kids really love eating. They get offended if we go to a Chinese or Vietnamese restaurant and they look around and everyone else has chopsticks and our server brings us a fork.
Yeah,
they're really offended.
Yeah, that's a owie.
Yeah.
So
okay, so utensils. So number 4, wash up and come to the table clean. Don't groom or attend to hygiene at the table.
This means no nail clipping.
Oh, or like using a toothpick at the table in front of people.
See, what I learned from my grandma was like, especially we would have roast and like vegetables, and she would use a piece of paper as a toothpick,
as dental floss
at the table.
Yeah.
So that was a bad habit I had to.
Yeah. Yeah. No grooming at the table. Come already clean and take care of other things away from the table.
But some places give you a toothpick.
Yeah. You can go somewhere else and use the toothpick.
Can't you cover your mouth up and just kind of?
Not according to Emily Post.
Okay. And is that how we're going to do this?
I'm just saying.
All right.
I'm not saying I'm the authority. I'm just saying.
No, but I just mean us. Like, I know you don't.
Well,
like
I don't prefer to see anybody using a toothpick at the table because then let's not get into the gory details. Let's just leave that right there.
All right,
and
so washing up, like.
Okay, let's not go deeply into each of these because I think we're probably already losing some people.
Okay, all right. So wash your hands.
Wash your hands. I mean, that's pretty standard. Wash your hands before you eat and after you eat.
Fair.
And if you're serving food, for sure, wash your hands. The one after that, along the hygiene lines, remember to use your napkin.
Yeah.
So keep your beard clean.
But you don't use it as a bib.
Unless you're eating lobster.
But then they give you a bib.
Right.
So don't use your napkin as a bib and don't blow your nose at the table.
No. No,
That's
that
a
happens
hard no.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, you want to read the next one?
Wait until you're done chewing to sip or swallow a drink. So, like, don't try to be
Don't.
extra and do
No.
both things at the same
No.
time.
No. So I think so far these are not, except for the cell phone, these are pretty universal through all the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and drinking during a meal, like drinking water or something, is very American culture too. That
Right.
there's certain, because we can always tell when we order drinks in the wrong order, how we've made a faux pas
Like
culturally.
if you have coffee before or after,
Yeah.
or, you know,
Or water with ice. All of those things are cultural norms that we can violate. So number 7.
So this one is really on par with what we were just talking about. Pace yourself with fellow diners. Cut only one piece of food at a time. So slow down. Slow down, Van Dyke.
Oh, that doesn't mean a race. Like everybody should kind of pace with us.
No, like, yeah, hurry and go.
Who's going to be, you look around the table, who's going to be the pace car?
No, I think it's try to go at the more leisurely pace.
Yeah.
Or just read the room too, you know.
And your dad was good at that, of everybody stays present until the last person is done eating.
Yeah, that was a family rule. Nobody leaves the table until everybody's finished. Because usually we had conversation after the meal too.
And one of the ones, I don't know if it's on there, but it's really important to our family, was showing gratitude to the cook. So saying thank you, not evaluating it, or that was a 7 out of 10, but just thanking whoever prepared the meal, and then asking to be excused. And we were fairly disciplined on that.
Yeah, I think that came from my family, and we did that with our kids. And so they would sit still at a table, and they knew they couldn't go anywhere else or do anything else until first everybody was done eating, and then they thanked the cook for the meal and asked if they could be excused.
And it's easier to sit there if you have a little food in front of you versus wolfing it down and then having to wait a half an hour. So.
Yeah, or woofing yours down and then trying to take some from your sister.
Well, that happened as well. So what are we on?
Number 8.
Avoid slouching.
Avoid slouching. Don't place your elbows on the table. There we go. While eating. Although there's a side, although it is okay to prop your elbows on the table while conversing between courses.
Yeah. And I was always taught you can do your forearm, not your elbows. So like the forearm on the edge, because I have this problem of leaning in.
Right.
So that was, my mom told me, no elbows on the table, but I'm like, well, all right. So
so you can lean, I guess, in between. Yeah. Lean in between, but no elbows while you're eating.
And slouching means leaning back, right? Is that?
Slouching. Yeah, I guess you could, yeah. So we can't be Romans reclined at the feast.
Is there one about pants on here? On Emily? Does Emily talk about pants?
No, that was in the gentleman at the table, which I'll let you finish with if that makes you happy.
It makes
I'll
me
let you if we're gonna flip the script here. So number 9, instead of reaching across the table for something, ask for it to be passed to you. So that, my dad did have to enforce that one quite a bit at our table.
Yeah.
So instead of leaning across or jumping across the table and grab something, ask for it to be passed.
So when we're tossing rolls around the table,
we have occasionally thrown food.
Well, there's a lot of us. It's a long table.
It's a shortcut.
That's right. My mom did enforce that one about passing, though.
I knew you were going to tell that story.
Can I tell that story?
Let me just defend your mom. It's only one time. Yeah. She stands by it, though.
Yeah. So we were at, I think it was like Russ's in Western Michigan, and Mom, Grandma, and Mom and Grandma were talking. And I was like, excuse me. You
were trying to get their attention.
I was trying to get their attention to ask for the butter for my roll, and they ignored me. So I reached across the table, and quicker than you can believe, Mom stabbed me with a fork. and she
stopped your little hand with a fork.
She stopped my hand with a fork and continued talking. Then she's like, "You do not reach across the table."
You never forgot it, did you?
No, and I was like, I was asking for the butter. But it was rude on my part.
Well, it's a lesson learned.
It was a lesson learned, and it was a different time. It was a different era. So number 10.
Yeah. So number 10, bring your best self to the meal. Take part in the dinner conversation. So that's the relational part.
Yeah.
It's like you're there to actually be with people.
Yep.
You're not just there to consume food.
We have some friends that are really good at asking questions. We were just at a dinner party that the host did a fabulous job of who he brought together and then facilitating conversation. I find it is a lost skill. It's remarkable. Yeah. There's a couple of people I know that are really, really good at that, of everybody is able to have a chance of sharing, and it's enjoyable, and you learn so much that I'd like for us to practice that. I mean, we did with our kids. We had the talk box.
Yeah, we did.
That tried to facilitate conversation.
Yeah, as the kids were getting sort of into what we like to affectionately call the cave years, when they get into pre-adolescence and sort of don't converse as easily, or if you ask them questions, it feels intrusive. So we made a box that they could put questions in. Yeah. And we also had like tabletop conversation cards that we would pull sometimes and just say, would be a prompt and everybody would answer it. And we got some pretty good, lively conversation with that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then it's always, birth is always a fun topic if we run out of topics to talk about. And so, well, the last one that we'll
each have one. Do you want to have one from the gentleman at the table?
Sure.
And then I'll end with one from the lady.
I'll pretend
from the
I'm
lady book.
reading from it, because I just have.
You have it in
mine in my head.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I don't. Maybe I need to actually look it up. So it's about your pants, your jeans. So a gentleman does not loosen his belt, no matter how discreetly, even after an extravagantly large meal, because I had some uncles that would do that. That would just be like, "Whoo, that was a great meal," and they
just start by wearing your stretchy pants.
Yeah, there's your Thanksgiving pants.
That's right.
But as we say, pants are not optional at the dinner table.
No, never.
And so keeping your pants on is always important.
Yes, in any culture, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll end with this one.
Okay.
And leave everybody on this note, because I think we've shared quite enough.
No one's ever coming over to our house for dinner again.
Or maybe they'd really like to now.
Maybe.
We'll have a longer list.
We'll see.
Okay. All right. And this one, I'll leave you with a piece from a lady at the table. In any aspect of her life, but especially at the dinner table, a lady does not bite off more than she can chew.
Oh, all right. Well,
there you go.
I don't think we have anything else to say beyond that.
No.
So I do know how I get people to leave our dinner party.
You get up and turn the lights off.
Yep, just start turning off the lights. It's like you don't have to go home, but you'll probably be sitting in the dark. So consider this us turning off the lights on the podcast.